Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored, one of the best in the business. Chris, what's going on, my man? How are you?
Well, honestly, I'm a little bit triggered right now that the fact that Vandy was able to send a football several states away to get to you, and we don't have a fucking center at Bama that can snap it 4 yards. So, other than that, doing well.
That is. I was going to ask you though, Chris, the grieving process for a Alabama fan, Chris Marler. I mean, do you not just go back and watch highlights of the 6 other national titles that Nick Saban has won? I mean, is there a whole lot of grieving there, or
So
do you just get in fights on X with Georgia fans? Like, how's that coping process work?
dumbest fucking fan base. This entire weird narrative and like take that people are having that like Georgia would have beaten Michigan or Florida State would have beaten Michigan. First off, saying anything publicly after losing by 60 points, and I mean anything publicly, is a bold move. Yeah, it just cracks me up though. This idea, I mean, like maybe Georgia would have, I don't know, but I do know they didn't beat the team that lost to Michigan. So weird flex. The grieving process, my mom used to always joke around about this because she would say, you've gotten older, you like are a lot more mature, you handle like Bama losses a lot better. I was like, no, Mom, like when I was growing up, Bama sucked. So I was always upset. Like they just don't lose anymore. I don't know, man. This team was a lot of fun to watch. I think I was really sad as when it was over because it ended so abruptly, and it was like the end of like the season. I feel like I had like my best and favorite year that I've had professionally and personally, all that kind of stuff, and it just kind of came to an end. But I mean, tremendous season, lot to be proud of for that team. And it sucks.
Yeah, and I want to start there too. Happy New Year, Chris, and congratulations to you guys over at Saturday Down South. Yourself personally with College Football Uncensored, all the other great successes that you had in 2023, many more in 2024, and well deserved. Let's get right into it though. The Rose Bowl. I mean, obviously it was a classic, down to the wire, goes to overtime. Your just initial thoughts and impressions. I mean, obviously it's a disappointing finish. I still went on record, Chris, and said that I thought this was Saban's best coaching job because Alabama obviously had deficiencies and some holes, and maybe more that they had in quite some time. I mean, the offensive line giving up the most sacks it had in 35 years, I think I read somewhere. So your thoughts, did anything surprise you on how the game played out or what happened Monday night in the ball game?
It kind of felt like because I was pretty arrogant towards Michigan fans just for the sake of hating the Big Ten Michigan fans, right? Like I was very aware that was a very good football team they were about to play. And I remember saying, I don't know if it was on here, if it was on somewhere else, but I was like, I feel like Bama fans are going to be in for a little bit of a rude awakening in the first half because they're not going to realize how physically talented this team is. I mean, they just, there's a reason why they ranked in the top 5 in like 20 something categories this season. But I was really impressed with Michigan. It felt like you showed up either like you woke up late for a test or you showed up to a fight and you like square up to throw a punch, and then you realize the dude's got cauliflower ear and he's just throwing kicks as well, because it was like they had no answer for anything in the first half. Like people kept talking about how bad the play calling was, and then you look at it and you're like, they didn't have Milroe's first 6 dropbacks, they had 4 sacks. It didn't seem like in the first half they had any kind of answer. They felt like it was, I don't know if it was unprepared, but they were out schemed and out coached and outplayed. And then you get to the second half and you get a lot of momentum and you put yourself in the best possible scenario for usually a Saban and Bama team where you have a touchdown lead with 4 minutes to go and like your defense has got to get a stop. And I think what was deflating about it was like, I didn't mind the play call in overtime at all. I thought I liked what they did with Jalen Milroe. Maybe they could have given him like a pass option as well, the run pass. But he's earned that for one, and he's also the best athlete on the field. So I didn't mind that at all. The usage of like the what do you call it? The skill position players. Like Roydell Williams had 16 carries against Georgia. He only had 6. Or I'm sorry, he never had less than 6 in any game this season. He had 1 carry the whole game. You had a true freshman running back come in and get carries. It just was very confusing. But you in the second half when you have 12 plays for 24 yards, that's what the defense allowed against Michigan. Michigan had 6 carries for -2 yards, Chris. 6 carries for -2 yards going into the last 4 minutes in that final drive. And then when they got the ball, their last 10 plays in the fourth and overtime, they gained 100 yards and scored 2 touchdowns. So it's like, you just can't win like that.
Chris, I'm sure you've gotten this question a lot this season, but again, you watched that game on Monday and it just reinforced the issues on the offensive line for Alabama. But how does a team like Alabama, a program like Alabama that recruits the way they do, how do you have those kind of issues? You mentioned it. How do you have a center that can't snap the football? And is it, I mean, it's as simple as fix the offensive line. But I mean, how do they do that? Because I don't think talent's the issue, right?
No, talent's not. I mean, that has been one of the main pieces to these teams for a long time. I think there was up until last year, they had five or six straight seasons where they had an offensive lineman and a skill position player drafted in the first round. Like I don't know, they haven't always done great in the NFL, but they've been very, very good in college, and they recruit, 5 stars everywhere. And so to see the PFF grades for the blocking, like I mean, dude, they gave up 49 sacks this year, which ranked 129th in the country out of 133 teams, and they had gelled a little bit as of late in the year, and they'd played a lot better as a unit, but it just, it looked as sloppy as it could have when they needed that not to happen the most. I don't know how you fix it. I, I don't know how you fix it. It's not like you can bring in even more talent. A lot of these kids are like the top ranked player at their position or in the country, at the offensive line position or offensive tackle position. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it is mind blowing to watch that this big of a drop off over the last 3 or 4 years.
Chris, Jalen Milrow in that game, 16 to 23, 116 yards passing. Had the fumble, did not throw an interception, no touchdown passes. What's the confidence level in him going into next year? I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, when he steps on the field, he's the best athlete on the field. I think definitely could take strides as a
Yeah.
passer. Your overall feelings on him, because Alabama's going to be very talented, but you know as well as I do, to win a national championship, you just got to have that guy under center.
But here's the thing too. I think that he is. Maybe he's limited versus or in comparison to like the other quarterbacks in the playoff, because it's a really good batch of quarterbacks that are in those Final Four teams. But this idea that Jalen Milrow is to blame at all for that game, like first thing I said, 6 dropbacks, 4 sacks.
Mhm.
Dude was running for his life the entire game. So I don't know what you do to get like, I mean, like the confidence level for me going in the offseason, he's the guy. Like, this is his first year starting. He has a new OC that is like young, not in his first year as an OC, but he's young. And then you talk about the fact that like they're trying to get all this gel together. It took a quarter of the way through the season for them to even figure out like what their identity was going to be from a starter standpoint. And then it wasn't like they unveiled the entire playbook until the LSU game where they started letting him run finally. I think he came into his own in the last month of the season, and like what you want out of a quarterback more than anything is a leader. And he is the leader in that locker room. I think the team kind of goes as he goes sometimes, or for most of the time. If anyone else steps like under center or steps on the field next year at quarterback, I'm going to be fucking irate. If Tyler Buckner is even in the stadium, I'll lose my mind. But I think that he had a really, really good season. He did not play well. It didn't have his best game against Michigan. I mean, but that's also a really, really good team that like, I mean, dude, they've given up over 200 yards passing twice all season. Like they've given up 7 total touchdown passes on the year. Like it's a really, really good defense. And he struggled.
Mhm. Chris, there was one drive specifically where I think there were like 2 or 3 bad snaps in a row. What was the roller coaster of emotions like for you watching that?
It I'm trying not to like slander this kid because he has the yips obviously, like, and I've played baseball most of my life and I totally get it, and it happens, like it's a mental block or something like that. It can't happen. It can't fucking happen, and especially at that stage. And that's one of the things I was pretty critical about Bama on all year is, regardless of what it was, there was always something it seemed like that would rear its ugly head that made me feel like this team was like good and overcoming a lot of their flaws, but never elite. And I tell you what, man, you're lucky to be close in that game in the first half. Like you had 38 total yards and 34 of them came on 1 touchdown run. They get a field goal late at the end of the first half, get some momentum, and then they come out of the locker room making adjustments. And that's all you can ask for from Bama because they've done it all year. Like, get to the locker room, make adjustments, and go win a fucking ball game. And I think they gained like 30 yards in the first two plays. They crossed midfield, and sure as shit, we snap a ball at his feet and then snap one over his head, and we lose like 29 yards in the first two plays. It is at every moment that felt like it was critical. It not having the confidence that you're even going to be able to begin the play that you're calling in an efficient way. It's like if you were a chef on fucking Top Chef and all you had to do was turn the oven on and you couldn't do it. Just you're for whatever reason. It was so fucking like very difficult to watch.
Chris, to the rest of the SEC bowl season, which teams impressed you most? Obviously, Missouri got that big one over
Mhm.
Ohio State, Ole Miss over Penn State, and they've got so much momentum going into 2024. Tennessee and Nico, I heard you talking about it this morning on Crane and Company about you think they could be a sleeper for the
Yeah.
12-team playoff, which I agree with you. Just your top takeaways, if you will, from the SEC bowl season.
I mean, Georgia played pretty well. That was
Indeed.
that was something. No, I thought it was a really good. Like this has been considered a down year for the SEC by like everyone, right? I still think that top to bottom, I think the Pac-12 is probably the best conference in college football this year. But this was considered a down year for the SEC, and like how it wasn't that deep, they weren't that good. And then you finish bowl season with, I think it was 4 11-win teams, which is incredible. Ole Miss, Mizzou, like I said, Bama and Georgia. I think Tennessee, like the bowl game is whatever. I think that going into next year, they're going to be dangerous for sure. I also say that the biggest takeaway I had, I don't know if this even answers the question, but the craziest thing I saw from a stat, like from a stat wise, the Big Ten came into bowl season with the top 4 ranked scoring defenses in the country. They had 5 in the top 20, and they had 4 of the top 5. What do you call it, defenses in terms of yards per game or yards per game allowed, right? Just elite, like 4 in the top 5 in both categories. Ohio State, their game against Mizzou, they scored 3 points, the lowest they've scored in 7 years. Penn State gave up the most points and the most yards they've given up in any game all season when they played Ole Miss, gave up 540 yards. Wisconsin gave the most points and most yards they've given up all season in a game to LSU. It's a top 20 defense for them. And I'm missing one. Oh, Iowa. Iowa gave up 35 points, which is the most they give up all season. So, like, what they were able to do, I think, against good competition, ranked competition, top to bottom, was really impressive from the SEC.
And speaking on teams, Chris, that aren't in the SEC yet, but will be in just a couple months, Oklahoma and Texas. They both lose their bowl games, but both
Yeah.
had pretty solid seasons. Your thoughts on them now is, we're going to get a lot of way too early 2024 stuff, yours truly included.
Yeah.
Your thoughts now that it's a reality that's right in front of us, how Texas and Oklahoma are set up to succeed or maybe take some lumps in that first year.
So it'll be interesting to see who all comes back for Texas, like what the offense is going to look like. I say the thing that surprised me the most from them this year is because I've said for 2 years in a row now I thought they were going to like make the jump, and they finally get to the playoff this year. But in the 2 losses they had against Washington and OU, you can kind of put it on Sarkisian. Like I say he's the best offensive mind in the game at any level. But in both those games, you had the ball inside the 5-yard line at the end of the game or 10-yard line at the end of the game with at least 3 calls that like in your back pocket, and you come up short. So that's a little bit concerning. OU, that fan base, arrogant is putting it kindly. They are. I hope they're in for a rude awakening. I think it'll be interesting to see Jackson Arnold and what he's able to do. Very, very overconfident, I think. And if you would have told me that the cocky one was going to be Oklahoma, I would have probably thought you were crazy. I do think Texas is set up long term for success better, just because I think like you saw them this year how good they played on defense, and they were a more complete team. And and now that we're in NIL, man, like it's not going to go away. They are going to have money and bags being thrown at these recruits constantly. Like they will never be, I think, non-relevant in this era ever again.
Chris Marler, Saturday Down South. Chris, one last thing. We'll get you out of here. National championship game officially set. It is Michigan, who you just saw, against the Washington Huskies and Michael Penix Jr., who I think is just a wizard back there at the quarterback position. Your thoughts on the ball game? It feels like 2 contrasting styles maybe with Michigan being run game defense and then Washington this high flying offense.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on how it'll play out next Monday night?
I honestly, it's the second time in 18 years there's not going to be an SEC team in, so it feels a little bit weird, right? Like this is like in our job, especially, it feels like the end of the season, but there's still one more game left. Like we're about to go record a preview pod in like 2 hours. I'm like, what the hell? I think it's a great matchup, man. I think it's a great matchup. It might not seem that way. People are gonna think it's just like like you said, contrasting styles. Washington has been doubted all year, and it sounds stupid because they're 14-0, but like it's a lot like TCU last year. Like all they've done is win games. They might have been closer than people may have liked, but all they've done is beat ranked teams and win games over and over. Like disrespected, I feel like almost every time they were in a big moment. When you talk about Oregon beating Oregon and then being a 10-point underdog the next time you play Oregon and beating them again, you're an underdog against Texas. You got to go all the way down to New Orleans to go play them, which is a much easier trip for Texas. I really like that team, man. They're good up front. They've got legit NFL talent at receiver, and Penix has been incredible to watch. And just the way he's able to evade the rush and still get the ball out is incredible. Michigan is a fucking beast, man. They are legit. They are like really, really legit. And I hated having to be proven wrong seeing that, but it was the thing that blew me away the most about Michigan. Had nothing to do with the talent or like, Blake Corum or JJ McCarthy. They were one step ahead of Alabama for most of that game from a coaching standpoint, like from the coordinator standpoint, and they were much more creative in their play calling and play design than I ever thought they would be. I thought it was like a 1970s 3 yards in a cloud of dust bullshit. When you combine that and all the talent they have in that roster, I think Michigan's going to win because it just kind of feels like they're on a mission from, I don't know, whatever Jim Harbaugh believes in. But I think it's going to be a really good game. I think Michigan's going to win.
Michigan feels like the Houston Astros of college football. That's kind of, I've been going back to that. It just
Connor Stalions was in the
type
fucking stadium at the
Yeah.
Rose Bowl. Unreal. But yeah, I mean, I don't. It's they beat Bama now, so like it's that part's over. I'm not going to sit here and shit on them anymore because I tell you what, man. Like all jokes aside, like I felt like they kind of skated or kind of whistled through the graveyard to get there, but they are every bit of deserving as a top 4 team. That's for sure.
Chris Marler, one of the best in the business. Chris, always appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Y'all keep up the great work and look forward to having many electric conversations with you in 2024, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thanks, dude.